Before you watch this story, please like and subscribe so you don't miss the next incredible moment when the truth comes out and justice is served. Hit the notification bell so you're always updated. It was a Saturday afternoon in a quiet suburban neighborhood when Marcus Turner made a terrible discovery. His beloved golden retriever, Duke, a dog he had raised from a puppy for the past 7 years, was missing from his backyard. Marcus immediately went searching through the neighborhood, calling Duke's name over and over, his heart pounding with fear and desperation. But what happened next would shock him in ways he never expected. Within minutes of finding Duke with a neighboring couple, Marcus would be accused of being a thief. He would be threatened with police. He would be humiliated in front of his entire neighborhood. And all of it would be based on one terrible assumption, that a black man couldn't possibly own a dog like Duke. But Marcus had something these people didn't expect. He had proof. He had documentation. And most importantly, he had a neighborhood full of witnesses who would stand up for the truth. What followed was a lesson in justice delivered at lightning speed. A lesson these people would never forget. Build the story slowly and clearly. Marcus Turner was a man who did everything right. At 38 years old, Marcus had built a life that most people would be proud of. He was a civil engineer with a major construction company in Austin, Texas. He had a good job, a decent salary, and a reputation for being reliable, professional, and ethical. But more importantly, Marcus was a man who loved deeply and genuinely cared about those around him. Marcus had grown up in a working-class family in Dallas. His father had been a carpenter, and his mother had been a nurse. They had taught him the value of hard work, honesty, and compassion. They had taught him to respect others and to treat people the way he wanted to be treated. When Marcus was 31 years old, his father had passed away from a heart attack. It was a devastating loss. Marcus had needed something to help him through the grief. He had needed something to love and care for. And that's when he decided to get a dog. He went to a local animal shelter and met Duke, a 3-month-old golden retriever puppy with bright eyes and a wagging tail. From the moment Marcus saw Duke, he knew that this dog was meant to be his. He adopted Duke that very day. For the next 7 years, Marcus and Duke had been inseparable. Duke had become Marcus's closest companion. Every morning, Marcus would take Duke for a run before work. Every evening, he would take Duke to the dog park. On weekends, they would go hiking together in the beautiful Texas countryside. Marcus had invested thousands of dollars in Duke's care. He took Duke to the veterinarian regularly for checkups and vaccinations. He bought Duke high-quality dog food. He had trained Duke with a professional dog trainer. Duke wore a microchip and had all the proper identification. Marcus loved Duke like a son. 2 years ago, Marcus had moved to a quiet suburban neighborhood called Pinewood Estates. It was a nice area with tree-lined streets, well-maintained homes, and friendly neighbors. Marcus had bought a modest 2-bedroom house with a beautiful backyard. The backyard was fenced in securely, and it was the perfect place for Duke to play and run around. Marcus was happy. He felt like he had finally built the life he wanted. His neighbors seemed friendly enough. Most of them kept to themselves, but they would wave and say hello when they saw each other. There was one couple, however, who seemed to be more distant and unfriendly than the others. Their names were David and Patricia Whitmore. The Whitmores lived 2 houses down from Marcus. They were a wealthy couple in their 50s. David was a successful banker, and Patricia came from old money. They had the nicest house on the block, a sprawling 3-story colonial with manicured lawns and expensive landscaping. The Whitmores had a reputation in the neighborhood. They were the kind of people who complained about everything. They complained about noise. They complained about leaves blowing into their yard. They complained about children playing on the street. They complained about people walking dogs in the neighborhood. Most of the neighbors avoided them. Marcus had only spoken to the Whitmores once, about 6 months after he had moved in. He had been walking Duke on a leash down the street when Patricia Whitmore had come out of her house. "That's a very nice dog," she had said, in a tone that made it clear it wasn't actually a compliment. "Thank you," Marcus had replied politely. "His name is Duke." "Well, please keep him away from our property," Patricia had said curtly. "We don't appreciate dog hair blowing into our yard or dogs barking early in the morning." Marcus had found the interaction strange and uncomfortable, but he had simply nodded and continued his walk. He was used to dealing with difficult people. He had never imagined that his kindness to Duke would become the center of a neighborhood crisis. Make viewers emotionally invested. It was a Saturday afternoon in late May when everything fell apart. Marcus had let Duke out into the backyard in the morning so he could get some exercise and fresh air. The backyard was fenced in securely, and there was a gate that was always locked. Marcus had let Duke play outside while he did some yard work of his own, trimming hedges and pulling weeds. At around 1:30 p.m., Marcus went inside to get a drink of water and to check his email. He was only inside for about 10 minutes. But when he went back outside to check on Duke, the dog was gone. Marcus's heart immediately began to race. He checked the gate. It was still locked. He checked the fence line. There were no gaps or holes. The only logical explanation was that someone had come into his backyard and taken Duke. Marcus grabbed his phone and immediately started calling Duke's name. He ran through the neighborhood, checking every street, every alley, and every park. He was frantic. He was terrified that something had happened to his best friend. After 4 to 5 minutes of searching, Marcus finally spotted a familiar golden figure on the other side of the neighborhood. He started running toward the dog, his heart pounding with hope and relief. That's when he saw them. The Whitmores were standing in their yard, and they were holding Duke's leash. Marcus ran up to them, relief flooding his body. "Thank God I found him," Marcus said, slightly out of breath. "Duke must have gotten out somehow. Thank you so much for finding him. I was so worried." Marcus reached out to take Duke's leash from Patricia Whitmore's hand. But Patricia didn't give it to him. "I think we need to talk about this," Patricia said, pulling the leash back away from Marcus. "What do you mean?" Marcus asked, confused. "That's my dog. I appreciate you finding him, but I really need to get him home." "Your dog?" David Whitmore said, stepping forward. His voice was cold and accusatory. "We don't think so. This is our dog. We've had her for 3 years. Her name is Bella." Marcus felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. "What are you talking about?" Marcus said, his voice shaking. "That's Duke. He's my dog. I've had him for 7 years. I adopted him from a shelter. I have all his paperwork at home." "That's ridiculous," Patricia said with a sneer. "A man like you couldn't possibly own a dog like this. Look at him. He's a purebred golden retriever. He's worth thousands of dollars. You probably stole him from someone." The implication was crystal clear. Marcus was black. The Whitmores assumed that he couldn't possibly afford or be trusted to own a dog of Duke's quality. The only way he could have such a dog was if he had stolen it. "I didn't steal this dog," Marcus said firmly, trying to keep his composure. "I own this dog. I have documentation. I have veterinary records. I have his microchip information. Please, just let me take him home." "We're calling the police," David said, pulling out his phone. "You're trying to steal our dog, and we're not going to stand for it." Marcus couldn't believe what was happening. This was happening. They were actually calling the police on him for trying to take his own dog. "Fine," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the rage and fear building inside him. "Call the police. I'll show them my documentation. This will be resolved very quickly." The police arrived about 15 minutes later. Officer James Mitchell, a middle-aged white man with a serious expression, got out of his patrol car and assessed the situation. "Can someone explain to me what's going on here?" Officer Mitchell asked. "This man is trying to steal our dog," Patricia said immediately, pointing at Marcus. "He came up to us and grabbed the dog. We have owned Bella for 3 years. We have veterinary records. We have photographs." "That's a lie," Marcus said calmly. "Officer, this is my dog, Duke. He got out of my backyard somehow, and these people found him. I have proof of ownership. I have his microchip information. I have veterinary records. I have adoption papers from the animal shelter." Officer Mitchell looked between Marcus and the Whitmores. This was a tricky situation. He had no way of knowing who was telling the truth without investigating. "I'll need to see documentation from both parties," Officer Mitchell said. I have my documents inside my house, Marcus said. It's just 2 doors down. Can we go get them? I'll go with you, Officer Mitchell said. As they walked toward Marcus's house, Officer Mitchell asked Marcus some questions. How did you get this dog? I adopted him from the Austin Animal Shelter 7 years ago, Marcus explained. He was a 3-month-old puppy at the time. He had been brought in as a stray. I fell in love with him immediately and decided to adopt him. I have all the paperwork from the adoption. They arrived at Marcus's house, and Marcus went to his filing cabinet and pulled out a folder containing all of Duke's documentation. There was the adoption certificate from the Austin Animal Shelter, dated exactly 7 years earlier. There were veterinary records from his local vet going back 7 years, all with Duke's description and a photograph. There was proof of a microchip implant and registration. Officer Mitchell examined all the documents carefully. He pulled out his phone and called the microchip registry. The registry confirmed that the microchip in the dog matched Marcus Turner's name and address. Okay, Officer Mitchell said, nodding slowly. This appears to be legitimate. You have clear documentation that this dog is yours. The microchip registry also confirms it. So here's my dog? Marcus asked, just to be absolutely clear. Yes, this appears to be your dog, Officer Mitchell said. We're going to go back to the Whitmores and explain the situation. And I'm going to have a conversation with them about making false accusations. # karma or the big reveal. When they returned to the Whitmores' house, Officer Mitchell approached David and Patricia with a stern expression. I've verified the documentation, Officer Mitchell said. The dog belongs to Mr. Turner. He has adoption papers from 7 years ago, veterinary records, and microchip registration. There is no question about it. This is his dog. But that's not possible, Patricia sputtered. He's lying. He must have forged the documents. These documents are from the Austin Animal Shelter and registered veterinarians, Officer Mitchell said coldly. They're not something someone can just forge. Mr. Turner is telling the truth. You are not. I could cite you for filing a false police report, but I'm going to give you a warning this time. However, if anything like this happens again, there will be consequences. Do you understand? The Whitmores said nothing. They were clearly stunned and embarrassed. Mr. Turner, you can take your dog and go, Officer Mitchell said. Marcus didn't hesitate. He took Duke's leash from Patricia's hand and began to walk away. But before he left, he turned back to look at the Whitmores. I hope you understand what you did today, Marcus said quietly. You accused me of something I didn't do based solely on the color of my skin and your assumptions about what someone like me could or couldn't afford. You weaponized the police against me. And you were willing to steal my dog because you didn't believe that I could own something this valuable. That's racism, plain and simple. With that, Marcus walked away with Duke, his dog pressed against his leg, relieved to be reunited with his owner. But what Marcus didn't know was that the situation was far from over. The neighbor who lived directly across from the Whitmores, a woman named Jennifer Chen, had witnessed the entire incident from her front porch. She had heard every word of the confrontation. She had seen the police arrive. She had seen Officer Mitchell verify Marcus's documentation. And she had heard the Whitmores' cruel assumptions. Jennifer was a retired journalist. She knew a story when she saw one. She pulled out her phone and called a friend who worked for the local news station in Austin. She explained the entire situation, how a black man had been accused of stealing his own dog because of racial assumptions made by his wealthy white neighbors. The story was too good to pass up. Within 2 hours, the local news station had picked up the story. They sent a reporter and camera crew to interview Marcus. They also interviewed Officer Mitchell, who confirmed the documentation and explained that the Whitmores' accusations were completely unfounded. The news report aired that evening. Local couple accuses man of stealing his own dog. Racist assumptions lead to police investigation. The story was shared on social media thousands of times. It sparked outrage in the Austin community. People were disgusted by the Whitmores' behavior. They were disgusted by the racism that had motivated their accusations. But the consequences for the Whitmores were just beginning. By the next morning, the story had gone viral. It had been shared over 100,000 times on social media. Local and national news outlets were picking it up. The Whitmores were being identified by name and address. Their actions were being condemned across the internet. People began leaving reviews on the banking website where David Whitmore worked, describing him as a racist and calling for his termination. People left one-star reviews on social media accounts associated with both David and Patricia. More importantly, civil rights organizations took notice. The NAACP issued a statement condemning the Whitmores' behavior and calling it an example of racial profiling and discrimination. A civil rights lawyer reached out to Marcus and offered to represent him in a lawsuit against the Whitmores for false accusation and racial discrimination. Within 3 days, David Whitmore received a call from his employer. He was being placed on administrative leave pending an investigation into the incident. His company did not want to be associated with racism. Within a week, Patricia Whitmore received calls from the country club and the charity board she sat on. They were asking her to resign from her positions, citing concerns about her judgment and values. The Whitmores' reputation, which had taken them decades to build, was completely destroyed in less than a week. But there was more to come. The Austin Police Department's Internal Affairs Division began investigating Officer Mitchell's handling of the situation. While Officer Mitchell had ultimately done the right thing, some people felt that he should have been more aggressive in addressing the false accusation. The investigation concluded that Officer Mitchell had handled the situation appropriately, but it highlighted the need for better training on implicit bias and racial discrimination. News outlets began digging deeper into the Whitmores' history. They discovered that this wasn't the first time they had made complaints about black residents in the neighborhood. They had complained to the HOA about a black family's lawn not being maintained properly, even though it was perfectly maintained. They had complained about a black college student's car being parked on the street, even though it was parked legally. This was a pattern of behavior. This was racism masquerading as community concerns. The story continued to grow. National media outlets picked it up. Talk shows discussed it. Social media influencers shared it with their millions of followers. The Whitmores had become the face of casual racism in America. The moral takeaway. 2 weeks after the incident, Marcus received a call from a lawyer representing David and Patricia Whitmore. They wanted to settle the civil rights lawsuit that had been filed against them. The settlement included a significant monetary compensation to Marcus. But more importantly, it included a public apology and a commitment to undergo racial sensitivity training. The Whitmores issued a formal written apology. "We sincerely apologize for our actions on May 28th. We made assumptions about Mr. Marcus Turner based on his race and accused him of stealing his own dog. Our behavior was racist and discriminatory. We have no excuse for it. We have hurt Mr. Turner, we have embarrassed ourselves and our community, and we have perpetuated harmful stereotypes. We are committed to learning about our own biases and prejudices. We are attending racial sensitivity training. We are committed to being better people. We ask for Mr. Turner's forgiveness and the forgiveness of the Austin community." But for many people, the apology was too little, too late. David Whitmore was not reinstated at his banking job. Instead, he was let go after the investigation concluded that the incident raised serious questions about his judgment and values. At age 53, he was essentially unemployable in his field due to his reputation. Patricia Whitmore resigned from her country club and the charity boards. She no longer had the social standing she had once enjoyed. Her friends from her old circles stopped calling. The Whitmores put their house up for sale, but potential buyers learned about the incident and were hesitant to move to a neighborhood where they might face similar accusations. The house sat on the market for 6 months before finally selling at a significant loss. But perhaps the most important consequence was internal. David and Patricia Whitmore had to face themselves. They had to confront the reality of their racism. They had to acknowledge that their assumptions had been based on centuries of harmful stereotypes. And they had to live with the knowledge that their actions had caused real harm to a real person. They underwent 12 weeks of racial sensitivity training at a local civil rights organization. The training was intense and challenging. It forced them to examine their beliefs and assumptions. It forced them to listen to the experiences of people who had faced discrimination. It forced them to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves. At the end of the program, David and Patricia Whitmore made a decision. They wanted to do something to repair the harm they had caused. They wanted to contribute to the community in a meaningful way. They established a scholarship fund for young Black professionals in Austin. They donated $50,000 to the Austin Civil Rights Alliance. They began volunteering at a community center in a predominantly Black neighborhood. These actions didn't erase what they had done. They didn't undo the harm. But they represented a commitment to change and to do better. Marcus, meanwhile, had become something of a minor celebrity. He had been interviewed by multiple news outlets. Civil rights organizations wanted to use his story as an example of racial discrimination in America. Companies had reached out offering sponsorships and partnerships. But Marcus wanted nothing more than to go back to his quiet life with Duke. He did accept one opportunity, however. He agreed to speak at an event organized by the Austin Civil Rights Alliance about his experience with racial profiling. He talked about the fear he had felt in that moment. He talked about the injustice of being accused based on stereotypes. He talked about the importance of standing up against racism, both in obvious forms and in the subtle, everyday forms that many people don't even realize they're engaging in. "What happened to me wasn't that unusual," Marcus told the audience. "It happens to Black people all the time. A Black man wearing a nice suit is assumed to be a criminal. A Black woman in a fancy car is assumed to have stolen it. A Black man with a valuable dog is assumed to be a thief." These assumptions are based on centuries of racist propaganda that tells us that Black people don't belong in certain spaces or own certain things. But the reality is that Black people can be and do all the things that white people do. We can own businesses. We can own valuable possessions. We can be professionals. We can be successful. And no one, has the right to question that based on the color of our skin. The speech was met with standing applause. Videos of the speech were shared on social media thousands of times. 6 months after the incident, Marcus was walking Duke through the neighborhood when he encountered David and Patricia Whitmore. They were both dressed simply and were working in their front yard. They didn't try to approach Marcus. They simply nodded respectfully and went back to their work. The Whitmore's house looked different now. It was less ostentatiously maintained. They seemed smaller, less powerful, less important. They had learned a hard lesson about the consequences of racism. As Marcus continued his walk with Duke, he reflected on how quickly everything had changed. One moment of racism had led to public humiliation, professional consequences, and the destruction of a reputation that had taken decades to build. But it had also led to change. It had led to conversations about racism. It had led to awareness. It had led to consequences for racist behavior. Marcus believed that this was exactly what needed to happen more often in America. Racism shouldn't be tolerated. Racist behavior should have consequences. And people who engaged in discrimination should have to face the reality of what they had done. But Marcus also believed in redemption. He believed that people could change. He believed that the Whitmores, despite their terrible behavior, still had the opportunity to become better people. And he hoped that they would take that opportunity. As Marcus and Duke walked back toward home, Duke's tail wagging happily, Marcus felt a sense of peace. He had been wrongly accused. He had been harassed. He had been discriminated against. But he had also been vindicated. The truth had come out. Justice had been served. And life had moved forward. The most important thing was that he and Duke were together, where they belonged. The final lesson. This story teaches us something powerful about the dangers of assumptions and stereotypes. The Whitmores made one simple assumption, that a Black man couldn't own a valuable dog. That assumption led them down a path of racism, discrimination, and ultimately, public humiliation and professional consequences. But this story also shows us something else. It shows us that in today's world, with social media and technology, racism has consequences. Racist behavior doesn't go unnoticed. It doesn't go unpunished. And the spread of information is so fast that a moment of racism can reach millions of people within hours. This is actually a positive development. For too long, racist behavior has been tolerated and overlooked. People have been able to discriminate against others without any real consequences. But now, with social media and technology, there's accountability. There's transparency. There's nowhere to hide. At the same time, this story reminds us that redemption is still possible. The Whitmores faced real consequences for their actions, but they also had the opportunity to learn and grow. They chose to do the work to become better people. And that choice matters. The lesson for all of us is this: don't make assumptions about people based on their race, their gender, their age, or any other demographic characteristic. See people as individuals. Treat them with respect and dignity. And if you find yourself engaging in racist behavior or discriminatory thinking, have the courage to confront it and change it. Because in today's world, karma hits fast. Asterisk if this story about justice, accountability, and the consequences of racism inspired you, please like and subscribe so you don't miss the next story about when wrongdoing is exposed and truth prevails. Hit the notification bell to stay updated. And in the comments below, share your thoughts about racism, assumptions, and accountability. Have you ever witnessed someone facing consequences for racist behavior? Have you ever had to confront your own biases and assumptions? Your story matters, and I'd love to hear it. About this story ***. This story was crafted to illustrate the real dangers of racial profiling and the power of documentation and truth in the face of discrimination. It's a reminder that in our modern world, actions have immediate and visible consequences, especially when those actions are rooted in racism. The story also shows that while consequences are necessary and just, redemption and change are still possible for those who are willing to do the work.